everybody, welcome to Fresh Outlook, the show where we're talking about what you're talking about. I'm your host, Taryn Brill, but you can call me TWB. Well, with the presidential election right around the corner, it seems that politics is on just about everyone's minds these days. And you know what that means? Everyone's got an opinion, that's for sure. So on today's show, we're tackling three timely topics. First up, Arizona's highly controversial anti-immigration law, how it's now spreading to other states, and then we're going to talk unemployment, particularly how recent college graduates are being affected, the bleak job market they're faced with, and finally, we're going to be talking about what else? Talk shows, and specifically how the presidential candidates seem to be popping up all over the talk show circuit. But the question is, do these appearances really work when it comes to getting your vote? Before we get the conversation started, let's meet our all-star panel. Great to see you, everybody. Who do we have with us today? WJ, start it off.
How you doing? I'm WJ O'Reilly. I'm the headmaster of the Hanal School in New Jersey and also the co-producer and host of a new show on PBS called K-12 Conversation.
Terrific. Welcome, WJ. James.
I am James Braxton Peterson. I am the Director of Africana Studies at Lehigh University and a contributor to thegrio.com.
Can I call you JBP?
You can call me JBP. There we go. There we go.
Next we have FM, which stands for?
That's right, FMM, Francesca Maximé. I'm a news anchor here at Every TV, and I'm also the author of a new book called Rooted.
All right, terrific. Great to have you guys here. I want passion, people. I want passion. All
right. We shall have it.
We shall have it. Let's get right to it, shall we? First up, we are talking about Arizona State Senate Bill 1070. Sometimes it's referred to as the Show Me Your Papers law. Now, it's considered one of the strictest anti-illegal immigration measures in recent U.S. history, and now it appears that copycat measures are being passed in a number of U.S. states, including Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, South Carolina, and Utah. Take a look.
For centuries, the United States of America has welcomed the tired, the poor, and the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The land of opportunity has been built on this philosophy, but over the recent years, its citizens have turned their backs on this once welcoming credo. Immigrants entering the country without applying for citizenship have stirred up controversy in many states north of the border. Fears of gang violence, career displacement, and general quality of life have been associated with the increase of non-documented immigration. Now, new laws that allow police enforcement to legally profile individuals thought to be immigrants have been at the forefront of the political landscape. And with a number of states like Alabama, Georgia, and Florida taking after Arizona's immigration bill, many questions arise. What does an immigrant look like? Do these bills follow the laws of the U.S. Constitution? And the most impending, what impact will these decisions have on the upcoming presidential election?
And obviously 1070 is getting a lot of attention, stirring up a ton of controversy, obviously. But before we discuss that, vice presidential debate just took place. Very exciting. Curious your thoughts. And that said, tell me what's sort of the number one election issue on your mind this week? Start with you, James.
Well, this week the debates are really heavy on my mind, but to be honest with you, the number one issue for me is, are we going to talk more about women's issues and women's health issues at the presidential debate level? I hope it will happen this coming up a week on Tuesday, but I feel like it's been too absent, and we had one or two questions at the end of the vice presidential debate, almost nothing in the first presidential debate, and it's really, if you think about the voting demographics, is one of the most important issues for us to consider right now.
Well played, well played. WJ, what do you say?
I just want to see who comes off finally as human in the midst of these debates. So, I mean, everyone I think has had their, we're seeing various, all sorts of hyperbole coming from both sides. You know, the last person standing that actually still has a sense of believability and humanism, I think, is the person who may get the most votes.
Human is so hard for Ron.
Maybe,
it's rough.
Maybe we should make the moderator take their pulse before we start.
They're
human. Check their blood pressure. FM, Francesca, what about you?
Well, you know, I mean, I have to agree with James. I mean, I really feel as though women's issues are really the things that need to be focused on. And sure, we got to it a little bit at the end of the VP debate, but it certainly needs to be more of a focus, as well as other issues that were not touched on: incarceration, gun control, environmental issues. There's a ton of stuff out there that still needs to be tackled.
There must be a reason why they're not being tackled, however. Maybe they're too infuriating, too inflaming for people.
It's politics, that's right. We're not going to hear them talk about gun control because it's too much of a politically charged issue, and both sides can lose votes one way or the other, even to discuss it. So.
For me, what I want to hear more about is what's going on with the Libya situation. You know, Biden says we weren't told that they needed more support. Congress is saying no, we told them. So now that I feel like the president is trying to save face, foreign policy was his political strength, and I'm curious to see what happens, because I wasn't
think it still
expecting
is, because Romney has 0. So I mean, Biden has 20 years and
But the Benghazi issue, even though it's not an issue that's at the forefront of voters' minds, it is a really, really important foreign policy issue. What's interesting is that we have to figure out how we're going to be more strategic about foreign policy. It's not about throwing money after the problem, and it's actually at this point, it's not about pointing blame at the administration or throwing the State Department under the bus. It's really about getting down to brass tacks, figuring out what's going on, and how do we troubleshoot to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Well, let's talk more about foreign policy, specifically 1070, the package that we just saw. Obviously immigration issues are at the forefront of this election. Real quickly, let's just recap 1070, this Arizona state law. It says that it's a misdemeanor crime for an alien to be in Arizona without carrying the required documents at all times, okay? So you're under arrest if you don't have your papers. The other provision, and this I have a problem with, during a lawful stop by police, let's say you go through a red light. I go through a red light, and then the officer says, you know what, you might be an undocumented, citizen. Show me your papers. That's what it says. How do the candidates stand on this? Obama, he's strictly against this bill. Let me just read you quickly a quote from him. He says, immigration is a federal matter, first and foremost. No American should ever live under a cloud of suspicion just because of what they look like. Going forward, we must ensure Arizona law enforcement officials do not enforce this law in a manner that undermines the civil rights of Americans. Romney, the opposite. He thinks this is a state issue. Each state has the duty to protect, deal with their own immigration issues. That said, is this a state or a federal issue? WJ, I start with you.
I'm just really focusing on the issue of people moving back and forth across the border, taking advantage, in some cases unjustifiably, of social services that have been earmarked for American citizens. I'm just saying that it's difficult for me to understand. It's difficult for me to understand how a certain amount of control can't be exercised in the situation. I'm certainly empathic about people being stopped simply because their skin color or their age or whatever. But on the other hand, how are you going to enforce what I think are enforceable laws without at least going through the motions of finding out who's carrying cases?
If you put it on the books and you have somebody out there cracking the whip, but that doesn't mean it's a right law in the first place.
Do you support this?
Do I support actually the stop and search, asking for papers? I think that it depends upon how the decision is made. You
sound like a politician. Answer the question. Answer the question.
It's a political year, darn it.
Are you running?
I'm not against the idea of it. Now, if people are going to be singled out because of their skin color, race, and so forth, I can understand that. That may become a matter for the ACLU eventually.
Racial profiling. James,
well,
is that what this is about?
I mean, listen, if you talk to law enforcement officials, they'll let you know that racial profiling is a part of their toolkit for what they have to do. But they also will concede that it's a shortcut. It relies on bias, and unfortunately, it's a blunt instrument for a very, very nuanced problem that we have. What people need to understand is that this region of America, first of all, used to be part of Mexico, but there are a lot of Mexican-American citizens that live legally, work, pay their taxes, and do everything they're supposed to do in this society, and those folk are going to be subject to these kinds of searches because of the way this law is constructed.
But if they're legal, why not?
As someone who has been profiled before, it is not only annoying, but it is humiliating, and it does ostracize you from sort of your sense of being a citizen here. So it has a lot of sort of deep impact on people. I think for those folks who have been racial profiled, they can attest to that.
Does it undermine our civil rights, Francesca?
Do the what?
Does it undermine our basic civil rights?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that is not only offensive, it is against what America is all about. We have had, an open door policy from the get-go. We were trying to flee persecution from the get-go. That's what America was founded on. Now, to tell people that just because, some of the people that are living, some of them that are living in Arizona that are saying, we fear crime, we're worried about X or Y or Z, which is basically the argument that went into,
and social services.
And social services and jobs and things like that. So we need to do this kind of a measure, which isn't unlike the stop and frisk policy that they have in New York City, right? That profiles African Americans.
Wait a second, Francesca. I'm going to stop. I'm going to roll back a bit on this open door policy. This country has not had an open door policy. My mother, who's a Belgian immigrant, came here, but with the T's being crossed
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness isn't the equivalent in verbiage of an open door policy?
It's not an open door policy. People need to actually go through the required paperwork to become naturalized and legitimized in the country where they're residing.
And a lot of people that have done that are citizens. A lot of people that haven't done that have become citizens anyway because they were being persecuted.
Well, look, proponents say this is necessary. Some major reasons. Increased violence, drug smuggling across the border. Let's point out Arizona is the state with the most illegal crossings at the Mexico-United States border. One congressman, who shall remain nameless, not because I don't want to say his name, because I didn't write it down, he says that undocumented immigrants are responsible for the increase in crime in Arizona. Point blank. They're the ones to blame. Show us your papers.
There's just no statistical data to support that. Arizona as a state doesn't have the highest crime rate in the nation, number one. So even though it has the most undocumented folk in it, it doesn't have the highest crime rate as a state. So there are no statistics to support that. At the end of the day, we should be trying to address the issues. And one of the real issues is that folk come across the border for economic opportunity. Sure. And we exploit that labor sometimes outside of our very own labor laws, and obviously against the sort of federal policy around immigration. And so we need to sort of get our own house in order, understand what the regional politics of this situation is, and really try to be more incisive about how we address undocumented
So
folk.
let me tie it back to the election. Incidentally, in terms of Hispanic voters, the latest poll shows Obama beating Romney 70% to 22%. That said, are you surprised? And does Romney have any chance with Latino voters? What should he do? If you're Romney, what do you do?
He's tried with his son, right? I mean, he's trying with these little, throwing stuff out there. I mean, well, you speak Spanish, I'm Latina, you know what I mean? I'm Haitian, Dominican, Italian, and all that kind of stuff.
You?
So, yeah, I am what you call that multiracial, biracial, whatever.
But you don't want to be pandered to. And the problem is, one thing that Romney really should do is he should really walk back the comments he made in the 47% video. Because that video got so much play, when he made the comment
that was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. When he made the comment that he wishes that his dad had been Mexican so that if he were Latino, it would be easier for him to win the race.
Yeah.
And it's so disrespectful to
and
Latino
he still
people.
uses illegal aliens,
but
not undocumented workers.
But if he walked back that comment, it would ring true with folk. I mean, that's a pretty serious mistake. I mean, if you were Latino, your father wouldn't have been governor because there weren't any Latino governors. So
it was nice to see Biden go after Ryan for the 47%. I want to see Obama go after Romney this Tuesday at Hofstra University.
But that doesn't mean that Denver and Florida aren't picking up a few Romney votes, because he's doing some call centers there and he's reaching out to the
Florida's a very
different
different demographic though for Romney, because it's such a stronger Cuban population.
Right.
Remember, the preponderance of Latinos here are Chicanos. So in Florida he can make some gains in Florida fairly successful.
No, Cubans skew conservatively.
Are you calling Florida for Romney right now?
I am not calling.
No.
Okay,
WJ, what do you think?
Unless it's misunderstood, I'm a Democrat. I'm from Massachusetts. But I have to think that my views, I think, are perceived as being slightly to the right of either of your views right now, perhaps even yours. But I think that we're very, very concerned about the upcoming election for obvious reasons. But I think in a sense, we're advocating without really stating it. And I'm getting that really
without
loud.
Stating what?
Without stating who it is that who you think should be voted for, who should win the election.
Well, I'm not going to say, because I'm a news anchor and I need to be impartial.
Well,
and I am impartial.
I need to hear more.
The reality
I'm not sure. I'm undecided.
I'm not undecided. I'm voting for President Barack Obama. I have no problem saying that publicly, and no limitations in saying that. But in terms of talking about the issues around immigration, to me, that's not partisan politics. To me, that's about having a good sort of federal immigration policy.
Wait, so is it a federal issue?
It is a federal issue. Listen, all of this business about states' rights versus federalism, to me, is harkening back to a bygone era.
I mean, that is the Republican ticket. It's me versus we. It's not about federalism. It's about each individual state and their own rights, not only about immigration, but about their economies and everything.
And just to be clear, part of the reason why I'm against states' rights is because of the history of states' rights in this country.
Let's take a moment, though, before we run out of time, you guys. We got to talk about the DREAM Act. Okay, Romney's vetoed it. Someone who wants to tell everybody at home, what's the DREAM Act real quickly, WJ?
Well, my understanding is that it's actually about those young people who can show that they're here engaged in legitimate positive activities should be allowed amnesty and be allowed to stay.
And came here as children and came here without having autonomous
raised here as children.
As children, it's out of your control.
I'm all in favor of this. I live in South Brooklyn, and it's actually where on one side of Neptune Avenue there are lots and lots of Mexican families. These are wonderful families. They stay together. They work 2 and 3 jobs. They once they get married, they stay married. They love their children. They take good care of them. These people, whether they are here legally or not, I could care less. And certainly, young people coming in and establishing themselves in positive ways in this culture, they are certainly entitled to stay here and continue to grow with us.
Sure.
Do you support the DREAM Act, James?
Absolutely. I don't even think we need to I don't think we have to justify the fact that Chicanos, Latinos, Hispanic folk here are hardworking and go to school. I mean, that's proven by the history of this country. But
a lot of people don't believe that, by the way.
I know.
And I'm stating that's my experience to do.
It is.
And my responsibility to do that.
And I'm glad you did. But I think we should push it a little further. In fact, I think that we have to understand that the DREAM Act is a great idea, and I certainly support it, but there are some challenges inherent in it, which is for folk who have been undocumented and have sort of been dodging through this system, now have to sort of justify how they've been here for 5 years.
Yeah,
and
and
that's
those
what
little say it's not enough. I mean,
not
sort
enough.
of pandering to the whole immigration issue with that just sort of in time for the election. So most Latinos I know say this isn't enough, we need a lot more, and you haven't heard a lot of talk on immigration from these debates yet. And hopefully we will
or
coming
any
up.
talk. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, hopefully, obviously Obama is a DREAM Act supporter.
Sure.
I do want to bring up another statistic, guys. More than 60% of Arizona residents approve this law. On a national level, 60% approve it as well. Is that surprising? That most of this country thinks that it's a good idea?
it's fear-mongering. I mean, of course it's not surprising.
Well, the national narrative about immigration has been
clarify,
about...
which law are you talking about? You're talking
Sorry,
about
1070.
1070.
Yeah.
60% of
sorry, not the
Arizona-
DREAM Act. Sorry, segueing back to 1070.
The national narrative about immigration has been a generally negative one, which is people are invading us, they're taking our jobs, which is, again, those things simply are not true. There's no net immigration over the course of the Obama administration. He's deported so many folk. There literally is no net immigration since he's been in office. But we have to change that narrative, and we're doing it ourselves just by referring to folk as being undocumented as opposed to referring to them as being illegal. But we've got to sort of push the conversation forward. We got to change the negative narrative. I think that I love the debate that they were having about whether or not the borders have been open, because it's really somewhere in the middle of that. We've had a policy of immigration that's been much more progressive than most other nations, but there is a process that you have to go through.
Yeah, you don't want to be Algerian and try to be getting into Italy, for example.
That's
I mean, they're not really friendly over there. So I mean, I just think that United States as a whole needs to continue to provide opportunities for people, and I think that as a nation, it's something that historically we have always done, and we also want to be able to continue to grow. And frankly, these folks help our nation grow in all kinds of ways.
I fully agree.
Okay.
Fully agree.
All right.
Let's talk to the corporations that hire all these folks.
Get them on
Let's talk
the
to
phone.
the construction
Get them on the phone.
Yeah,
Like, I'd like
Get them on the phone.
to know who's in his 20
because we need
houses.
cooperation from those corporations
Right.
if you really want to have a policy that is that's a sophisticated immigration policy.
Well, I hope this comes up, on Tuesday. I'm excited.
Don't hold your breath.
All right, real quickly, federal or state issue, immigration. Who controls
it's a
it?
federal issue.
WJ.
I think it's a federal. Well, it's obviously both at this point, isn't it?
Federal 8.
I see it both ways.
Combining
I see
federal
it
and
both
state.
ways.
I
It's
say Fed 8.
functioning as both, but it's got to be federal. We have to
Yeah.
have a unified
Okay.
front on how we sort of legislate
Federal.
immigration
All right, guys.
policy.
All right, we got to wrap it there. You go call those corporations. Get them on the phone.
I'm on the phone.
During the commercial break. All right, well, from immigration to unemployment, coming up next on Fresh Outlook, we're going to discuss the tough job market that recent college graduates are facing, along with the burden of astronomical student debt. It's awful. And of course, we're going to take a look at what the presidential candidates have to say about all of it. That's ahead after the break. Stay tuned. You're watching Fresh Outlook. Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. So with unemployment on the rise and student loan debt weighing on recent college graduate shoulders, the job market is looking pretty grim. That's putting it mildly. Last year alone, unemployment among college grads averaged 9.4%. Take a look.
For decades, there was a natural progression for young adults in America. Graduate high school, graduate college, get married, buy a house, and have children. But recent years have seen a change in the way 20 to 30-somethings approach the stages of life. With the current recession and the heavy weight of student loans on their back, the traditional path is now no longer the only option. As the country wrestles with high unemployment, the bachelor's degree may be losing some of its weight, and graduates with jobs, meanwhile, have met sharp criticism from many employers about high self-confidence not matched by their level of know-how. With the 2012 presidential election in only a few weeks, these hot-button issues are firing up debate. President Obama recently launched a pay-as-you-learn program, while challenger Mitt Romney has warned that college expenses, in his view, should not be a federal problem. All these factors tie into another social change breaking across the country. Record numbers, more than half of 18 to 24-year-olds living at home with their parents. Is this what the new young American voter looks like?
Let's drop unemployment's down, right?
It's a good question. Is this what the young American voter looks like? Before we get into that issue, speaking of job creation, I want to check in with you guys. Name something or talk to us about something Obama or Romney said this week that caught your attention in terms of job creation. JBP. Something, did I get that right? Something
You
stick
did,
out?
you
Okay,
did.
good.
But you know what? It wasn't either President Obama or Mr. Romney that caught my attention, but Jack Welch, who's
yeah.
the former CEO of General Electric, who when the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates on unemployment came out at 7.8.
Yeah, what did he say?
He tweeted this outrageous tweet where he basically said that, you know, these Chicago guys, when they can't debate, so they basically cook the books with the numbers, which, you know, that was startling. And then he doubled down on it, you know, in media appearances afterwards. And there's a couple things that's really striking
Don't drink
about
and
that.
tweet.
Yeah, exactly. But he stood by it, though.
I mean, water.
He didn't back off. Number one, if you look at the numbers over the course of the year, they have been trending down over the course of the year. So this is not shocking. It's not that, and it's not that great of a number. If you were going to cook the books, hopefully you would cook them a little bit more than that. But then you have to understand that unemployment in our economy has a lot of behavioral factors in it. So when we're out there talking about these things in public, we're actually shaping people's attitudes about it and actually shape some of the sort of forces of the economy. So we have to be very, very careful when captains of industry come out and question the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That seems too political and too anti-American.
Once it's in print, forget about it.
Well, I just say be happy you're not in Spain or Greece.
Tell us more, Tell us more, Francesca.
Well, I mean, you know, the unemployment obviously overseas in the whole Eurozone is you know, their economy is facing some tough times, right? A quarter of people, 25% unemployment in Greece and Spain, stuff like that. I mean, that's ridiculous. We're at what, 7.8% now? I mean, it keeps on going down. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, Obama says he's created 4.6 million jobs.
Private sector jobs.
You know, right? That's big stuff. And no, he's not asking people to borrow money from their parents to start their own businesses. You know what I'm saying?
Not yet.
So, I mean, seriously, because, you know, yes, the college grads that are coming out are having to face, you know, a tough employment market. And sure, unemployment rates are a little bit higher with them, but at the same time, they have everything in front of them and they can create their own destiny in ways the previous generations couldn't with the advent of the internet. You know, we didn't have the web when I was growing up, and it is a way to definitely market yourself.
World. WJ, do you market yourself?
No,
that's not the question. That's not the question. I digress.
No, the generic message, notwithstanding Jack Welch's tweet, is that jobs are up and unemployment is down. And I think that as a general message, I think that's out there, and I think that that's going to have some influence on people's perception and how they're going to be voting. Yeah,
we should say it's fallen to 7.8%, down from 8.2. It's the lowest it's been in Obama's entire presidency. So now Romney cannot say there's been a net loss of jobs during the Obama administration.
That's right. It takes away some of their talking points.
He cannot say it, and if he says it on Tuesday, I'm going to be really mad. But I'm going to call him out.
But I mean, you know, how much fact checking have we done on everything? You know, I mean, you can go through the list again and again and again, and he will continue to say things that are flat out lies, because that's what he and Brian, as we saw the other day, did as well. I mean, you could just go down the list. So, you know, that notwithstanding, the truth of the matter is that the stimulus worked in a lot of ways. And, you know, more stimulus money isn't a bad thing. And this whole idea of, you know, the auto industry, and we bailed them out, they paid us back with interest. Why is that little extra footnote not always in it? You know what I mean? Those things matter when you're talking about job creation and people getting jobs back here in the United States.
But we should say there still are a lot of people out of work.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me throw out some numbers. Back to, you know, college graduates. This past spring, 2 million young people entered the job market. Obviously, the problem is there aren't any jobs. Student debt. More than 37 million Americans owe student debt. It surpasses all other forms of consumer debt. JBP? I want to ask you, why does the cost of education continue to rise? What's the deal?
Well, there are a couple of things. I mean, one, we have systematically defunded public education, and that makes the cost of education higher. There were private institutions that were hit really, really hard by the crash, and actually public institutions as well by the recession. And so they've been increasing tuition rates in some ways to try to recoup some of those losses. So they're suffering from the economy. Not places like Harvard, but they're suffering from
is that a dig?
That's not a dig.
That's not.
Harvard's endowment was not impacted the same way that many other institutions' endowments were impacted. They took a loss, but not the equivalent.
They lost, I think, 30% down. It's a fairly substantial number when you're talking tens of billions.
What's their endowment?
When you have, when you have $1 gazillion to start with.
So again, everyone impacted by it, but I think that's where you get some of the costs. And I think also there's some invisible things in our economy, and a lot of it has to do with baby boomers. We have a large sort of older population. Some of them are sort of not clogging, but they still are sort of in the job market. Some of them are sort of...
that would be me, by the way.
The reality is a lot of the jobs that are out there that are set up currently aren't really set up for the kind of new tech-savvy younger person that's out there, and the kind of jobs jobs that they are good for are ones that they're going to have to create themselves.
Right.
So more and more, you know, you have two options if you're a young kid graduating right now. One is to go get a trade degree, which is go to culinary school or go become a hairdresser
Medical
or go, you know, a medical tech, a lab tech, any of those kinds of things. Like
two out of three jobs, you just need on-the-job training.
Right, right.
I mean, why should I go to a 4-year at college? What's
the other thing is go back and study all the numbers stuff that you don't want to study, that I didn't want to study, because all those computer programming jobs, that analyst stuff, and if you want to be an app developer and make stuff for your iPhones and stuff like that.
That said,
so it's a changing kind of a job market.
I think you guys are much too understanding and much too kind towards young people who are in this particular, find themselves in this situation. If a young person needs to get a job, they can go out, they can get 2 or 3 part-time jobs, work 40, 50, 60 hours a week the way my kids have done, the way I did from time to time. And it don't wait for the perfect job to come. There's a lot of that going on. And I think that is part and parcel of kind of the way that they've been raised. The idea that we don't keep score in Little League or in soccer, that everybody wins, there are no losers, you're perfect just the way you are, and nobody has to fight to go out there and earn a dollar.
But he's making a great point, because there's something around 2 million jobs out there that are unfilled. And if 2/3 of those jobs only require on-the-job training, WJ is right that how we sort of see the American dream, how we see our trajectory into adulthood is somehow skewed against us. We got to be prepared to take the jobs that are out there and to work hard to get them.
Let me ask you this, is the 4-year degree becoming obsolete? Is it?
Absolutely not.
The 4-year degree
is American dream?
The 4-year bachelor's degree. Nowadays, it doesn't seem necessary.
I think it's absolutely critical to be an informed person in society in America today. You have to know your history. You have to know the history of the country. You have to know the history of the interactions globally that even created us and why we're here, the foundations. Of course, those 4-year degrees mean a lot. They teach you to do all the things.
But all that debt on your shoulders, how are you supposed to survive?
But the sad part is
there's no
that
jobs
high
after you
school systems
graduate.
are
You've got
failing
6
us,
figures
and what used to
debt.
be equivalent to a high school degree is often now what you get when you get out of a 4-year degree, and you're spending all that extra money. So that's really where the failure starts, at the public school level at a younger, age, and that's institutionalized publicly. And we're not going to get into too much of that right now. But the reality is that as these kids go forward, they need to consider these other kind of degrees that they can take, these certificates, these other kind of job opportunities.
It is both. You have to expand your sort of sense of what a good job is.
That's way more debt than anyone could.
Well, you have to expand your sense of what a good job is, and then as a society, we have to determine what our value system is. Do we value public education? Francesca's right. We've got to invest in public school K through 12, and also we have to refund the state institutions and especially the community colleges. If we want to talk about what WJ is talking about in terms of training folk for some of these special tech jobs and some of the jobs that are out there, we need to go to our community colleges to do that.
I want to ask you guys, do you guys have any solutions for debt? I mean, let's talk about what the candidates think. Obama supports pay-as-you-earn plan. It caps student loan payments at 10% of monthly discretionary income. Romney says no way. The government should have nothing to do with it. And after 20 years, it's gone. Is that ridiculous, WJ, that after 20 years your debt is expired?
It sounds like a wonderful option for anybody in that particular situation. I think if I find myself having to pay student loans,
I mean,
a large percentage of those loans will be paid off in 20 years. So it's kind of a strict thing. Are
you sure about that?
The way the world works is that people will put off things they don't have to do as long as possible.
With the average job, a lot of those federal loans would be actually paid off. There'd be some of them that wouldn't, but a large percentage of them would. I mean, again, the idea is, where is our value system? Do we value education, and can we invest in it? And can we do it in such a way that doesn't privatize it? Because part of the reason why the debt's so crazy right now is because we allow banks to come in and privatize student loans, and those loans have ridiculous adjustable rate, adjusting interest rates, and that was what makes the debt sort of accrue.
I got to say something about going to college nowadays. All due respect, kids don't go to college to learn necessarily. They go because there's this
life experience.
Excuse me. They go for this magic thing called a degree that's supposed to open doors for them, which doesn't do it any longer.
Well, it can, depending on whether or not you're a good. If you're a good networker and you can brand yourself and you can figure that out early on, then you need to learn how to hustle.
A lot of historians say today's graduates lack real workplace experience. This is the baby generation.
They're waiting for the perfect job.
27% of college graduates have their parents call when they have a problem.
What WJ is saying.
Yeah, well, that's
I cannot support or promote the idea that we should not be pursuing additional education. If you think about those sort of high-end jobs like engineering, certain kinds of civil servants, the green jobs for the green economy, a lot of that will come through four-year institutions and important science, what they call the STEM degrees, science, math, technology, and engineering. So those things happen, and we have great universities. We have some of the greatest universities in the world.
I just think this is the generation of entitlement. They
But
say, oh, I go to school, I got A's, give me a job.
But that's
those jobs will be filled by those people you're talking about in American universities. I'm talking about the other 65 to 70% of people who go to college for no really good reason, certainly not to learn. I'm sorry.
All I know is that when you instill in somebody the value of hard work, regardless of what kind of a job it is that you're doing. I mean, my mom had me go through a nurse's aide training when I was in high school. I ended up at Harvard. She made me work every summer myself to make, you know, $5,000 worth of my education that I would put toward it. She made me do that so that I would have a responsibility and an equity stake in my own future. It wasn't just one of those things that was handed to me.
But that's rare.
But I have to say one statistic.
I don't know if that's rare. And again, I just think that's a different issue from whether or not the education is actually valuable. We do need to change the culture. We need people to take more agency and get out of the sort of microwave mindset.
But what bothers me is that kids today are changing their majors because what they're really interested in won't get them a job. So they're majoring in finance and they want to make their
not being told is pursue what you love, but you must be excellent at it.
Words live by.
If you're not excellent, it ain't going to fly. So you better be excellent.
Thanks, guys. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of recent graduates, did you know they're a part of what many are calling the boomerang generation? Have you ever heard of it? I haven't. I'll give you a hint. It has nothing to do with the movie starring Eddie Murphy. I swear. We'll explain next on Fresh Outlook. Stay with us. And welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. Well, if you're just tuning in, we've been talking about the unemployment rate, the bleak job market recent graduates are facing. So it should come as no surprise to hear that record numbers of college graduates are now choosing to move back in with mom and dad after receiving that diploma. In fact, brace yourself for this statistic. Are you sitting down? Ready? Okay. 85% of college seniors plan on moving back home after graduation. 85%. For that reason, they're being dubbed the boomerang generation. Panel? Is this shocking or what?
No, it's not shocking. I think I moved back home.
85%?
Sure.
I moved back home probably like a half a dozen times in and out, you know, and I think that, you know, that was something that my mom had said I could do if I ever needed to, and I did. And so I pursued my dreams as a consequence of that opportunity. However, I'm not saying that that would work for all parents. I was a single child to a single parent, and so it worked in our situation. I think a lot of times parents need to just buckle down and say, look, you're no longer welcome here.
Right.
And in other situations, they can say, you know what, this is right now, this is a good thing for you, but let's have a time plan and let's have some kind of an idea about either paying rent or doing chores or some kind of, again, equity stake about your responsibility while you're at your parents' house.
Most parents and kids seem to be okay with it.
Yeah,
James, do you support this?
Well, I didn't do it myself. I left home at 14 for boarding school and never came back. But I do support it because because I think not because I don't love being at home, just because I came up in a different time.
You had to work,
and so, but I think there are a lot of different factors here. It's the housing market, it's the boomer generation.
Well, right, let me answer. Is it the generation? Is it these entitled kids, or is it the economy?
I think it's a combination of both, right? And so, like we were talking about in the previous segment, there are kids who have a kind of a warped vision of what their dream job should be, and it should be more about getting into the working economy. But it's not about getting out here and buying houses real quick, because the housing market doesn't really support that right now. So people living together, multi-generational households, make more sense in this particular economy, and I think that's why you see the numbers going up.
In 1980, WJ, 1 out of 10 college grads moved back in with their parents. Now 53% of 18 to 24-year-olds are doing it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's absolutely shocking. And I think it's in other words, the way this is going to be playing out over the next 10 or 15 years is going to be even more dramatic and even more negative. You were mentioning actually the fact that the housing market is so difficult for people. No one's talking about actually buying their first home. Right. Well, actually, I just spent the last 7 months in a town called Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where you can buy a house for about $10,000 if you really want one. You know, so what I'm saying is that
Binghamton's cheap too.
Well, it is, and it's a nice town. They have great pizza.
Is there plumbing in this house?
Probably not. They just steal the copper pipes.
There's no roof. There's no roof on the house. Okay, go ahead.
I hear you. I've got 2 sons. I've never paid a bill for them since the age of about 17. Bought their own cars, paid for all their own insurance. They moved out. Actually, they lived in the house after we divorced. They lived in the house for another couple of years, going to UMass Amherst. They're paying off all their student loans. They have great jobs, they make plenty of money.
So they've had good fortune, but let's say their fortune changes, WJ, and they say, Dad, I'm stuck, I got to move back in. Do you say no?
Well,
would
I say no? No, I wouldn't say no, but I'd have a good long conversation with them and find out what the reasons are, and I wouldn't cut them a whole lot of slack if I thought that it was in their interest to take responsibility for their lives.
I wouldn't assume that American families are cutting their kids a lot of slack. Some of these arrangements are really different. They're not all the same. Some of them have to deal with taking care of grandparents. Some of them have to do with the whole job piece. Some of them is just more economic for them to be back home, for not just for the children, but also for the parents.
Right.
I also think
they're sharing expenses, they're paying rent to their parents.
But I also think that part of this is about the breakdown of the American family and sort of what it means to be married and, you know, having young children at a young age and establishing yourself as an individual. Now that, you know, the women's movement has come to the forefront, I think a lot of guys, you know, we keep seeing year after year after year that marriage is delayed. People are getting married later. So men is 20,
having children 40, 45 is not an average.
So you don't have that guy going out there and saying, you know, I'm going to marry you, we're going to buy a house, we're going to start a family. That doesn't happen the way that it used to, especially in urban areas like New York City or other cities around the country, maybe more in smaller cities. And so that's part of it too, is because those folks are saying, you know what, it's easier for me to pursue my dreams and to do my career and do my thing and stay at home with my parents and stay at home for a little bit longer while I get my stuff together and maybe save a little bit more money. Whereas before they wouldn't do that because they'd feel like they had an obligation. It was more societally expected to be married and have kids and get out.
I don't want to seem like the eternal curmudgeon on this
Too
program.
late.
But what I want to say is that I think it's wonderful when families get back together again, because the way that our listen,
You're completely contradicting yourself.
That's the
Rewind
spice
the
of
tape.
life is contradiction. Listen, I think that actually
You're talking about from a family perspective.
one of the advantages
Someone else's family.
one
Go
of the
ahead.
advantages of poverty is that actually have multi-generations living under the same roof.
Right.
I think that's wonderful.
Okay.
Because you
stay together.
So how do we make it work?
He can have both of those positions though, because one position is about families and how you build community,
it's
and
about
that
community.
cross-generational interaction is so important. For kids to be able to interact with their grandparents in the same home is a very, very powerful thing. And one of the most valuable ways of sort of transmitting values.
So as an educator, what do you recommend? How can they get along?
As an educator, I feel like it's a situational kind of deal. Like if you have aging grandparents and you can help your parents out and also sort of build towards your career, you should do that. If your parents are struggling, if one of your parents lost their job and you can come back home and help them out, you should do that. If you've had a child and you're sort of struggling with how to take care of your own child, bring them to and live with grandma. So
I can't disagree with that either. But there comes a time, like as my dad used to say, when the mother lion would smack the cover across the face and throw them out of the cave once it falls time to grow up. And you've got to be able to see that when that time's come.
Sure.
Yes.
And I think you have to have a game plan. As a parent moving forward, if you're going to, consider having your kids come back in, or if you're a kid, have a game plan. Own up, buck up, invest in your own, you know what I mean? Don't just sit there.
But I know
be a
of students who have
forever.
gone, they go home not because they have to, they have jobs, they go home to take care of grandparents.
Right.
They go home because their
Different
father
motives.
lost their job.
That's legitimate.
It is legitimate.
That's totally
30
Absolutely.
seconds, guys. Just a statistic, though. Every time a household is formed, instead of moving back in, about $145,000 is output that year as spending ripples. So with all these 54% now, I mean, think that's cut in half. All this, it's
but you can't
a detriment to
spend what you
the
don't
economy.
have. You know what I mean? That's what got us into trouble in the first place. All this credit, right? Trying to buy houses that we can't really afford and do things that we can't
Except in
do.
Wilkes-Barre.
So this is about, hey, I know,
Binghamton.
trust me, I know. I used to live in
All right,
Binghamton.
well, I'm
You
moving in
can't
with
live there.
WJ.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, guys,
Joni.
we got to go to break. We got to go to break. But when we come back, we're talking about talk shows, my favorite. The talk show circuit has become a staple for presidential hopefuls, but does it really boost their campaign? That's next on Fresh Outlook. Don't go away. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. Well, if you're watching daytime or late night, The View or Letterman, you've probably caught an appearance or two by the Romneys or the Obamas. So can chat fests with Whoopi and Barbara or Dave and Jay really court voters? Take a look.
2012, the average American is saturated with media on a level we have never seen before. Today, with internet access, anyone can become a celebrity. So it only makes sense that the most influential person in the country could also be our biggest star. While presidential candidates appearing on TV talk shows is nothing new, it is now becoming a prerequisite to winning the election. As David Letterman once said, the road to the White House goes through me. With the 2012 vote drawing closer and closer, both President Obama, challenger Mitt Romney, and their wives have been appearing on shows such as The View and The Tonight Show at a feverish pace, which leads many to wonder, will these appearances make a difference come November 6th? And more importantly, should they?
Okay, we'll get to Chat Fest in a moment. I can't wait to talk about the talk. But first, let's talk about the VP debate that just took place. I want to know, was there a clear winner?
Biden
I was going to say.
was the clear winner. I think he made his points. I think he did everything that folk wanted the president to do in the first debate. And he exposed Ryan in real time for some of the ways in which they play with the truth on the issues.
WJ?
I'm not going to jump on board with that one. I thought
You're
that
not?
No, I'm not. I think that Biden did a wonderful job, but I think that Ryan also showed himself as having some poise. And I want to try to put myself in the shoes of people who aren't necessarily who aren't on this show and necessarily kind of leaning in particular political directions, because there's a lot of people out there who are, who are going to vote for the other guy, and I think that they saw that as a victory for Ryan, and I think that the fact that he had as much composure, drank a lot of water, I know, but he did show a lot of composure under fire, which I thought was good for a young guy. That was
no one said that about President Obama when he was composed in the face of all of Romney's lies. And what's interesting is that everyone on the left conceded that President Obama lost the first debate. No one on the right concedes that Ryan lost his debate.
I agree, actually. Francesca, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think two things. One, somebody needs to tell Joe Biden when he's on a split screen, because that goes into,
hilarious.
I don't think anybody told him he was going to be double boxed. And
right?
He was going to be,
surprise.
Every single time that he was laughing and smirking, and it's different.
He's
we
an
in the
animal.
TV.
Yeah.
No, but seriously,
some people were cheering that though. Some people loved that.
We in the TV news
actually
business know what it's like to have to do these different camera angles. So I actually think that Biden, as far as the actual debate, I think he did. Yeah,
okay.
I do. By a slight edge. I think Ryan held his own. I think that he could have done worse. I don't think that he made a complete fool out of himself or anything like that, which he could have done. And I think that, but I think Biden certainly came out.
Well, I'd say my personal opinion, I love Biden. I'm not saying I'm voting for him, but I'm saying he is such a character. I find this man hilarious. He's right on it. He's real. And it's funny, we say, listen though, we say the split screen, he's getting all this criticism, he looks smug and cocky. I say he should be cocky. He's our vice president. If there's someone in the country I want to be cocky and arrogant and a know-it-all, it's our vice president.
I must forget that he was also in compensatory mode. He had to undo some stuff that happened a couple days before.
I think the moderator won the debate, actually. She's the one
who said
no, seriously.
I forgot that joke.
Yeah, she won. She's a super smart woman, and she knew how to tackle those foreign policy issues. She really struck the right tone. I unfortunately thought that she got to some of the issues about, women's issues and stuff a little bit late in the game, and that we could have brought it up more to the forefront.
Especially after the Jim Lair debacle.
Yeah, well, no. She took the reins and she ran with it.
She took it.
Yeah,
go girl power.
Yes.
Doubtful, however, that either of those debates has changed anybody's mind about who they're going to vote for. Let's be honest.
That's true. Well, maybe let me. Good question. Does appearing on shows like The View or Letterman, does that change people? That too. Are they coming? They'll be here next week, maybe. Not, stay tuned. Does that change a voter's opinion?
It's more a reflection of the ways in which election cycles and the way in which we vote on people and decide how we're going to do that. It's a reflection of how that has changed. With the proliferation of media channels and outlets, we have all these different niche and all these different demographics. I mean, in the 70s, if a presidential candidate went on CBS, NBC, and ABC, they would hit 100 million people.
They had it covered.
Right? We can't even get that on a debate right now because it's been so diffuse. So the talk shows allow them really to talk a little bit more to their bases, because a lot of times those talk shows can cut across political lines. At the end of the day, I think they have to do it.
It's a must-do.
It's a must-do.
The talk shows are what are available today. The internet is what's available today. When I was a kid, and actually John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon were squaring off on television, that was the very first election that was really decided by how somebody came off on television. And this is merely kind of the extrapolation of that. And nothing new as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and the funny thing there is this very simple thing, and this is the power of television, is that, this is my high school history teacher's lesson, but, wearing the white shirt versus the light blue shirt when it was black and white. right? One looked gray and a little bit tinny and nasty, and the other
and the
one looked
sweating on the upper
yeah.
lip didn't help anybody.
Right.
you know, but I mean, think about it. You even look at Roger Ailes, who's the head of Fox News. He got into the talk show circuit at an early age. He was producing that with the Nixon factor and helped bring the Republicans forward in that regard. So it's a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful medium.
So, yeah, some say Bill Clinton. You remember him playing the
Arsenio
saxophone?
Hall.
I mean, that's
the first black
classic.
president with the saxophone.
I mean, I haven't. A lot of people say that single-handedly won him the election. It introduced him to younger voters, and they were hooked. He was cool.
Didn't hurt.
Yeah.
You know, look, I mean, Ann Romney on GMA.
Yeah,
I'm
what'd
not
you
such
think
a
about?
fan. Well, I'm not. I mean, I'm not a fan of
GMA or Ann Romney?
No.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of GMA having Ann Romney as like a host.
guest
You know what I'm
host,
saying?
right.
Like, it's one thing to bring
Conflict
somebody
of interest,
on and
yeah.
you know that kind of thing. I'm not really a fan of sort of substituting. It's one thing if it's live with Regis and Kelly or whatever it is.
She was
now.
making like griddle cakes or something, though. Is that really hosting?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just think that it's one thing to just sort of say, you know, hey, we just want to get to know you and we want to expose you to the American public and whatever. It's another thing to kind of, you know, sort of wheedle in
Having
on
him
a
host
news.
a segment is too much of an endorsement, you think?
I feel.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Did you guys see the Obamas on The View together?
I saw clips of it. It was a good piece. I mean, my favorite was Michelle on Letterman.
Yeah, why? Why so?
Well, one, because she seemed very comfortable talking with Letterman. She has a great sense of humor. I think she was still sort of presidential or first, like she still had the sort of the energy of her office, but she was able to reach out and speak to people. And Letterman, to me, is also just one of the best guys at those kind of interviews because he makes them seem very, very casual, but he still gets in some pretty good questions.
I was an intern there back in the day.
Okay.
It's a totally
So you
different
know
world
firsthand.
when the cameras are off.
I think,
That's another show. Go
I think
ahead.
actually this developing skill of moderators to actually deal with these very, very high-profile people on their show, like presidential candidates and presidents, they're evolving rapidly as well in their ease with doing this.
Right. Well, that's it. I mean, I like the Obamas on The View together. I mean, you see them sort of unbuttoned. You see them joking around, talking about their first kiss. I mean, you know, back in the day without these talk shows, you never got a sense of a candidate in that capacity.
To circle back to something that James was talking about before we even started taping the show, you know, look, these are people at the end of the day.
Yes.
And these kinds of opportunities, when you get to see Barack and Michelle together on the sofa chatting with the ladies, gives you an opportunity to get a window into their marriage. And by all accounts, I mean, look, they have a lot of help, right? Her mom is there. They have a lot of other folks
the White
around
House.
raising the kids when they're out being the parents and working hard, whether it's running the country or whether it's just being a regular parent or whatever. They have a lot of help. They do, I think, inspire a lot of people at that human level. And these kinds of talk shows and these kind of opportunities allow the average person to be able to tap into that and say, you know, hey, I want to kind of be connected to your world like that. And maybe I'm not so different
Forget
from
the
you.
Republicans seeing those same shows are going to be mocking of them and thinking that they're totally inappropriate.
They've
Let's
made
put
the
this in
calculus.
context, guys.
They've made the
opinion.
calculus, and it's worth it. Obviously, they would trust me. The people around that Obama team are pretty sharp people, and so and it's pretty calculated too. So they know it's going to have the right kind of impact, and it might be less about whether or not you're going to alienate other voters, and more about getting the enthusiasm up amongst your base.
And what about Romney with his Spanish language television appearance? That didn't go over so well. I mean, that orange makeup and everything. I mean, you have to play this.
I'm
Not
not
enough.
supposed to hear that coming from you.
What?
Well, that
I'm
was
saying,
a
it
scary
doesn't-
moment.
No,
Yeah.
We endorse no candidates on this show. Okay, we're completely unbiased. This is
Has
the record.
there been an appearance, though, that didn't go so well? Can anyone
That
think of
one?
anything?
That
Aside from that, though.
Yeah,
Aside from that, I mean, like on more mainstream, like anything where it was like, oh, shouldn't have done that.
Nothing glaring to me other than the fact that I think that sometimes they're a little too tepid. I think that this is an opportunity because they're a little bit more chatty
Unbutton the
Cathy
shirt
fest.
a little bit.
Yeah, to just relax
Well, look
a
what
little.
Jon Stewart's done.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, the statistics that most young people to get their news from the Colbert Report, Jon Stewart.
Right.
I mean,
the Daily
It's
Show.
more real to them.
I mean,
The
in
climate's
fact,
changed.
in fact, yeah, you were in a skit the other day.
I was
for
on the
Jo-
Daily
Yeah,
Show this week.
yeah.
Yes,
Congratulations.
thank you.
It was
That's
about the
terrific.
economy and it was
about the
about
economy.
jobs, and they were actually talking about campaign finance reform and the fact that campaign finance reform is such a huge industry that if you just keep pouring money into campaign finance reform, then you would solve the unemployment problem in the United States.
It was hilarious.
And it was great. They pulled a little clip.
They had a clip. I mean, what's interesting is that I do a lot of cable news shows, but when I do, anytime they show a clip of me on the Daily Show, all the young people are hitting me up on Twitter. That's when they see you. So they're
He's got a lot
definitely
of
checking
Twitter
for Jon
followers.
But to play devil's advocate, some people say that it's not appropriate for a presidential
Well, what are you
candidate.
gonna do? What would be
It's
appropriate?
like you're like losing credibility. I mean, who wants to
on
hear
With Jon
fluff?
Stewart?
We're on a
Yeah, to
comedy
be.
show?
I mean, just in general, doing these lighter segments. You know, I don't need my president to be light. I need him to make serious decisions and protect
Well,
national
when
security.
Obama
clearly
gets
they're
too
doing
wonky,
that.
they don't like it. So,
Right.
you know, they have to be more approachable.
But clearly clearly they're doing that as well. I mean, the same thing with Romney. They make real serious decisions, but what happens is when you appear with Jon Stewart, you're speaking to his constituency, and that's young people, and young people are disaffected. The reason why they watch Jon Stewart is because his cynical attitude about politics mirrors the way in which they see political machinery of our society.
You know, I agree, and I think pure gravitas doesn't do it anymore.
That's right.
For the presidential candidate in this country.
That's right. It's not enough.
Well, let's talk about social media. I mean, you have that whole thing to contend with.
It's a monster.
Obama's team was the first team that really kind of took that and ran with it, and they really used it to their advantage and courted the young vote, and they came out in droves for Obama.
That's right.
The thing is that, you know, Romney was a little late to the game, frankly, coming to it. He has certainly gone there, but, you know, you think about buying Twitter followers and such. You know, there's been a lot of talk about whether or not that happened in the Romney campaign, and then you think about, well, what's the integrity of that? I mean, you know, you just, there's a certain amount of getting your message out there, and there's a certain amount of perception too. So if you have some allegations about something like that, and you're, you know, about buying Twitter followers, and that's supposed to mean that you're, you know, more connected to social media, I would question whether or not that's more important, or whether or not you should just be able to show up on an appearance on a Spanish language television network and really deliver the message that you need to deliver.
We can't confuse the content that's on social media with the actual form of the media itself. It is a very, very powerful form. A lot of people play around and do stupid stuff on it.
As Jack Welch just
right.
Running.
But there are a lot of people who create movements on it. People disseminate a lot of information on it. I mean, Twitter in and of itself, forget about the ways in which silly people use it. Just think about the actual form of it.
A lot of my friends get their news from Twitter. They don't even have a TV.
Because it hits Twitter first.
That's true.
Well, the thing is,
let's not forget that Twitter is about pure mentions, and actually that's a statistic in and of itself. Who got just a mention in any of the social media? It's not about what anybody said. It's not about the communication they had to make. It's simply about mentioning their name and how many times.
I will say one thing: you must be authentic at the end of the day, and if you're not,
you must be what?
Authentic.
Authentic.
Yeah,
wherever you are.
This is my personal shtick. You have to be authentic no matter who you are, because you will get found out sooner or later. And so if the president, the vice president, you know, the Republican nominee, the Republican vice presidential nominee, if they do all these appearances, or they tweet and they Facebook and they do whatever and they amass all these people, if their actual message, if their humanity, if their truth of their platform isn't somehow authentic and rooted in reality, it's going to come out.
But I have an assertion to make about that. I think that in your mind, without stating your actual position or who you support in the election, that there are some in your mind who you consider authentic and some you consider inauthentic.
It doesn't matter what they do.
I've interviewed Mitt Romney. I know Mitt Romney. I was in Massachusetts working, and I will tell you how they controlled his message when I was working at you know, a local TV station in Massachusetts, and they controlled his message to disable you from answering from asking questions that would actually answer and bring forward facts, and they would disable you from being able to get to the truth about a situation. So the bottom line is no, it's not so much that I have a vested interest one way or the other. I've just experienced it, and it hasn't been one in which there was openness.
All right, guys. Guys, we got to wrap. That's all the time we have. But it's great seeing you. Thank you for being here. This has been terrific. Let's do this again next week. What do you think? Okay. I want to thank our all-star panel for all of their fresh outlooks: James, William, Francesca, and all of their respective initials. And remember, if you have a fresh outlook, we want to hear about it. Let us know on our Facebook page. You can also follow us on, we were just talking about it, Twitter, @AbreWTV. I'm TWB, or in the Twitterverse, I'm @TWBrill. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on FO, Fresh Outlook.
ABC.
BB, bye-bye.